Politicians like Bill Clinton and Joe Biden said that deindustrialization wouldn't be a problem because people would just learn how to code, right? Well, that's precisely what we've done. We sent a generation of kids to college to learn how to code. And now Elon Musk wants to import thousands of desperate guest workers to drive down wages in the low-level professional sector.
I don't see the folks coming over the border as the problem or the issue. I think it's the business owners.
My parents trusted an immigration attorney to do this, left our family unauthorized, and they were undocumented and lived in this country for 31 years, going through the process to get status. And just last year, my parents were able to get their green cards. But during the whole entire time, they were homeowners, taxpayers, workers, and contributing members of our country.
And when we have to compete with other contractors that are using people who are not here legally, they're forcing prices down.
$5,000 seems to be a workable number to the Hispanic guys that I've spoken to over many years. They would rather pay $5,000 per year to get a permit, not citizenship, not any of that. It shouldn't take 8 years to begin with.
Reds, the question is, thinking about immigration and how it affects America's working class, what is at the heart of the issue for you?
Thanks for everybody for joining tonight. Looks like we've got 50 some participants. In all disclosure, I want everybody to know that all my grandchildren are half immigrant, and that I wouldn't have any grandchildren whatsoever if it not been for my wonderful son-in-law who waited 8 years to immigrate legally into the United States. And I think the issue we have at stake here is we need to differentiate. This is not just about immigration, but this is about those who choose to follow the law, come here legally and peacefully. Again, those who chose to follow the law. In my son-in-law's case, he waited 8 years, his turn in line to come into this nation legally. And the issue I see in the United States is myself as a business owner, my background, I've got a Bachelor of Science, Construction Management at Washington, graduated 50 years ago, played a little football when I was there, a little bit. I've owned my own businesses since 1985, but the current immigration system is complete chaos. It's extremely difficult for contractors, business owners to compete in a market that is flooded with undocumented, I don't care what you want to call them, out of no disrespect, I'm going to use the term illegal, because that is the case with the markets flooded with illegal labor. And it's harming the middle class. I see this firsthand. I can see the contracts, as contractors and business owners, we're all held to best price, best quality, best ability to turn over a product. And when we have to compete with other contractors that are using people who are not here legally, they're forcing prices down. Not only are they forcing prices down, they're reducing some of the economizing the technology that we could have been brought into our industries far earlier, except for this huge infusion of undocumented labor, which is really lowered prices.
I'm in a construction business in Texas, and I've been a mason for 50 years, 52 years, and been in business for 30 of those years. And what he said is true. What I would like to interject is that for those 30 years, it's been very frustrating, especially for contractors in Texas. We didn't ask for this. The tradesmen, I being one of them, basically aged out while undocumented labor basically became the go-to for getting anything done. They're not just laborers, they're crews, they're framers, they're crews of concrete finishers. So they aren't just there with their hand out looking for a job, they are the crew. And they build the subdivisions. What my problem is that we're missing, and to this day, we're still missing an opportunity to essentially sell work visas, temporary work visas, not these $5 million things that are being pitched around, but $5,000 seems to be a workable number to the Hispanic guys that I've spoken to over many years. They would rather pay $5,000 per year to get a permit, not citizenship, not any of that. It shouldn't take 8 years to begin with. Your son-in-law, I commend him for doing that. I wish there was a streamlined way of making it not 8 years. I've heard longer. So it depends on a lot of factors. But just for a simple work visa, should be fingerprints, face ID, $5,000, and you're in for a year. And if you keep your nose clean and you don't wind up in the county jail, then you can renew it for the next year. That has never been discussed, and it's been privately agreed to with my Republican representatives, but they never bring it to light of day. So here we are now, and I'm talking about the first wave of immigrants back in the 90s. So this started for us back in 92, 93. So we're missing an opportunity to set things right to where they're not only paying a permit, but having their wages taxed. I don't see anything wrong with that. A lot of our blue friends would say they're poor people. They're not really poor. The ones I know have been here for quite some time, and they're charging the rate lower than me, but they're charging the rate that they're comfortable with. They set their own rates. We don't. So the notion that they don't have any money is not completely true. To get over here, they're paying these cartels anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000, and they're not really paying it up front. They're basically in debt with their family members. It's a promissory note when they're in this, transport system. We need to sell permits at a reasonable rate and make a ton of money and put it in the general fund.
I'm a grad student right now. But I guess I'm feeling a little bit out of place here, but I was working blue collar jobs before I enrolled in undergrad in my mid 20s. And I share all of your concerns that Nick and Mike have talked about. But I figured that since I'm in the sort of academic sector, that I would approach things from the perspective of college graduates. College grads typically aren't classified as working class, but I think that using the BA as a means of distinguishing the working class from professionals has a number of flaws. First, it ignores the huge mass of bachelor degree holders we have out there who are employed at blue collar jobs, mostly in the service sector, like Starbucks or something like that. The town I grew up in is just completely saturated with these people. And I understand that too many people go to college, but one of the reasons for that is because they're trying to avoid having to compete with immigrants who have brought down wages in the service sector and other sectors. Studies show that very few people who attend college do so for reasons other than expanding their employment opportunities. So I think that a good strategy for reducing wasteful spending on useless degrees would be to reduce competition and raise wages for working class people, so we don't have a ton of kids scrambling over the handful of good jobs that still exist. But even more importantly, this sort of story that we tell also leaves out the mass of like low-end white-collar workers who are impacted by labor arbitrage through immigration. Unlike blue-collar workers, white-collar workers usually compete with legal immigrants through guest worker programs like H-1B, which are inherently exploitative because they tie immigrant workers to single employers, which doesn't permit them to negotiate their wages or threaten to quit. I mean, no one in this cast is really in a position to negotiate for better wages or working conditions anyway, because the labor market is so heavily saturated, in part due to immigration. But those with the least ability to negotiate are guest workers who will lose their U.S. residency status if they quit or are fired for having the audacity to work to ask for better pay or more reasonable like working conditions. So it's almost like slave labor, right? Obviously, tech plutocrats would prefer to hire desperate and exploitable immigrants over native workers who are protected by labor laws and have certain expectations in terms of employment quality, fair wages, and decent hours, etc. The plutocrats say that this is necessary due to labor shortages, but this is obviously ridiculous, right? Like politicians like Bill Clinton and Joe Biden said that deindustrialization wouldn't be a problem because people would just learn how to code, right? Well, that's precisely what we've done. We sent a generation of kids to college to learn how to code. And now Elon Musk wants to import thousands of desperate guest workers to drive down wages in the low-level professional sector. So I hope nobody actually believes this propaganda, right? Labor is just like any other commodity in that it's subject to the laws of supply and demand. So if employers are calling the shots, then there's always going to be a labor shortage since they are trying to extract as much productivity out of workers for as little cost as possible. Sorry, I kind of went off on a rant there.
I just love a lot of what Scott just said. I think the first most important thing that I am really concerned about is abuse of H-1B. I don't think 7-Eleven workers, I mean, it's gotten down to that. Like people working what is not skilled labor are getting these visas through H-1B, which is, an abuse of what the intent of that was to start with. But for me also is I'm most concerned about the population left and right having more nuance on this issue and how it works. So clearly, our speakers like Mike in the beginning has, experience with his family with, obviously he wouldn't have grandkids if it wasn't for, for this process. But even he sees, there's some issues with the process, and let's tackle those problems rather than vilifying people for being racist, xenophobic, all of that. I think the discourse on immigration for many years and has been, down in the gutter. And I especially saw that when the Republican administration under Bush was tackling that issue. McCain was actually a champion of that comprehensive immigration reform, and Republicans were unfairly targeted as being racist or this and that for speaking on the nuances of the immigration issue. And that is actually one of the big reasons I became a Republican. I saw um people earnestly trying to work for a solution on the issue being unnecessarily vilified. So I think that's a problem that's going on right now. The other last week I was in Miami, and I had a Lyft driver who was calling Trump racist and all of that. And when I tried to discuss these issues with her, she was like very close-minded, and then that was kind of like, oh, cool, I'm gonna do this, this forum or whatever this event is that we're doing right now. And I said, oh, that's really shows me where the baseline of people are at when it comes to tackling this issue. There are nuances. There's imperfect solutions, but we need to talk about that versus knee jerking to to things that are character assassinations of people. I just don't. I think both sides have really not tackled this issue the way it should have. And now we have this whole host of problems. Like I said, the H-1B abuse, the guest worker program, which is very important, the whole outsourcing skilled labor. And also, there is a heart of this that is populism versus elitism. We really should not look down on manufacturing or blue collar jobs. And that's come through in this idea that you can just be like, everyone can be a coder. No, there are Americans that want to work the fields. I'm one, I'm a rancher. I love it. And I think that whole lifestyle and working hard and working with your hands is a very important thing that has gotten lost. So why should all our farm workers be like Mexican. And let's really go down to it's not just an immigration issue, but a whole who do we feel as Americans that we're above certain jobs? I'm not okay with that. So that's those are my important priorities when it comes to tackling this issue.
Thank you, Mark. And now going to thinking about, okay, what can be done? What is a policy or remedy that you favor to improve America's immigration system? Who wants to get started with that? Take about a minute or two for that. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, right out the bat, I fully support Trump's EB-5 program. I'll say $5 million is probably not enough money. If you look at the assets of this nation divided amongst the people, to bring in $5 million really doesn't pay for what we created here in this nation. A little bit of a concept on that. When we build a house, we have something called impact fees here in some areas, can run as much as $100,000. And these are for people who raise their families here. So this whole concept of when you come into this nation, all the infrastructure, the freeways, the dams, the schools, the hospitals, the national parks, and frankly, the million American lives that have been lost in our wars, to be able to give us the freedoms that we hold so dear today, there's actually no value you can get into that. I think the E-Verify would be a very powerful program. E-Verify would get the playing field level. There should be a $10,000 per day per employee penalty for any employer that doesn't follow E-Verify. By the way, what E-Verify would also help do is catch up to the deadbeat dads. So often when I have a new employee come on, it takes about 3-4 months for the state or the feds to catch up to him that he's a deadbeat dad. And as soon as I get that garnishment notice and put it in his payroll, boom, that guy is gone. With E-Verify, the deadbeat dads, they would be held responsible for the children that they have brought into this world. So there's possibilities that some of these methods not only would help the American worker, would also help relieve some of the social service problems we have with this inability to verify who our employers are.
Mike, just for those of us who may not be aware, just summarize E-Verify in 15 seconds.
E-Verify is a federal program. You just go online, you click online, you put in the documentation that you're given by the employee to double check that her social security number is accurate, legitimate.
So it's verifying that the person is authorized to work in the United States.
Yeah, and it's not just social security; it could be green card, any other accesses.
Got it. Okay. Let's go to Scott. Nick, go for it. Yeah, what's a policy or remedy that you favor?
Well, E-Verify is all well and good. This is my opinion. E-Verify is all well and good for employer-employee relationships. I'm going to, again, default to all the subdivisions going on around me as we speak. Pulte Homes has no obligation to implement E-Verify when they hire a concrete crew. They're hiring the crew. They are not employing anyone, and their lawyers will stand there in court and say that they're not our employees. They're 1099 subs. We don't know them, and we're not obligated. And so this doesn't cover the millions of homes being built in Texas by national home builders. So E-Verify is great when you own a hardware store and you got to hire 2 guys in the back. But that's not going to stop those are big draw companies, and they hire hundreds and thousands of workers across the state at least, but United States, I don't know where it's more predominant, but I'm just talking about Texas, and I'm just talking about construction. E-Verify is not enough, or not really adequate. The tax ID number, the ITIN number, is a tax account that is open and willingly given to undocumented immigrants by the IRS for them to pay taxes. And that is not allowed as a legal working document. Well, they're setting themselves up to pay taxes. I don't understand the logic of not letting that be a major drive to tax their income, make them at least temporarily legal to work. And again, nothing I say here tonight has anything to do with citizenship. That's a whole different ball game. We're talking about a workforce that are really pretty much transient anyway. I mean, in the construction business, guys work for 6 months or a year and they move on,
So
depending
Nick,
on the
just take
workforce.
15 more seconds. I'm hearing you say that you favor temporary work visas.
Yes, I am. And paid temporary work visas that are $1 less than the cartels charge, and have that be something that follows them year after year, and they keep their nose clean and they can renew it. I don't
Got
see
it.
the problem with that.
All right, thank you. Scott, what's a policy remedy you favor?
Well, I'm with Mike on this. I agree with the universal e-verify. I'm not exactly sure what I'm missing that Nick is referring to, and perhaps he can enlighten me on this. But I just don't think that it should be possible for illegal immigrants to work in the United States, period. I don't care if you're working for a contractor or whatever the situation is. But the flip side of that is that I think that a lot of the rights rhetoric about dealing with immigration is kind of wrong in the sense that we blame people for crossing illegally. I mean, a lot of people are fleeing desperate situations, and uh, we blame people for breaking the law. I mean, I still think that we shouldn't tolerate illegal immigration and we should, deport illegal immigrants. But I think that we have to recognize that people are fleeing desperate situations, and it's time to start cracking down on the employers who are exploiting people's situations rather than demonizing people who are fleeing desperate situations. So I was also going to say something about removing H-1B worker programs, but I've got a funny feeling that Mark is going to tackle that issue. So,
Mark, live from the ranch, what's a policy or remedy you favor?
I want to address some of the policies that were mentioned. So, for example, EB-5, I think is also fraught with abuse. So I've actually seen like EB-5, and then there's a sister program called EB-1 that I feel has been now abused by a lot of Chinese Communist Party to buy immigration, basically, for a lot of their elite to come here and take over large swaths of land and businesses here in America. So I kind of I'm not crazy about the implementation, at least, of EB-5. Yes, of course, we want to attract investors from other countries to come here, but we need to have maybe some safeguards around that when it's starting to become a national security issue. Now, for H-1Bs, I think, as Scott mentioned, I think there's absolutely a lot of issues around that need to be tackled before I can even say that we should continue with it. Because I'd rather scrap it right now too than to have it operate the way it is and bringing all this unskilled labor and being abused to have lots of low-skilled, unskilled people coming in. And then, what's the effect of that? The effect of that is I live in San Bernardino County in California, and it is a Hispanic minority city or county, and we're just we have all sorts of problems. Fentanyl. We have drug cartels of that are setting up shop here. Marijuana grow farms that are draining all the water that we need to tackle before I can say any of these programs are good.
Again, Gabby, I'm going to actually call on you first.
Okay.
And the question is, again, when it comes to immigration and how it affects America's working class, what is at the heart of the issue for you? And what is an experience or relationship that has shaped your perspective?
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Good to be with all of you today. And for me, what's at the heart of this issue is that our current immigration system incentivizes for people to go around the law. than go through it. And there really isn't, when I hear people say, make the line, why don't just people get legal? We don't have, right, that system. We have an over-enforced system that has ended the natural immigration patterns, fueling not just the smuggling networks, but encouraging businesses to exploit workers with wages barely above forced labor. So ironically, this is not just something that, as we know, hurts American workers, but it's also hurting immigrants. And it is creating for Americans a downward pressure on wages and leaving positions unfilled. And for the immigrants, it's leaving them in very vulnerable situations where I have witnessed, right, wage theft and people just not being able to speak up. And I think for me, at its core, immigration is not just about policies. It is about supply and demand and human beings, which makes it really complex, right? And reality is that our workforce is aging, birth rates are declining, and in some industries, right, there is a struggle to find jobs and fill these positions. And so for me, I think that instead of us recognizing that immigration is part of the solution, and that it always been, we start falling into a scarcity mentality and also blaming immigrants for taking jobs when in reality they're helping, right, sustain. And for me, at the core of it is my family and the story that we prove this, right? So we came from Ecuador to Miami in 1993, seeking safety opportunities. My parents actually, unlike many immigrants, did have money to be able to hire an attorney. And after 5 years, more or less, of going through a process, a clerical mistake that we never learned about, right? My parents trusted an immigration attorney to do this, left our family unauthorized, and they were undocumented and lived in this country for 31 years, going through the process to get status. And just last year, my parents were able to get their green cards. But during the whole entire time, they were homeowners, taxpayers, workers, and contributing members of our country. So that's something that we never really talk about, how immigrants are good for the economy, how they are part of the economy. If they don't have work authorization or social security numbers, as Nick mentioned, there's ITIN numbers. And so they are, right, supporting and helping, but unfortunately, they're not able to. So I do think that for us, right, it's another thing that we have to do, understand that without people, without workers, everything grinds to a halt. And we know it has been reported that in 2022 and 2023, um, having a surge of immigrants actually helped curb inflation by allowing businesses to fill open jobs. And without that workforce, like, companies would have just had to either produce less or drive prices up. And here's for me the bottom line, that instead of fearing that competition, right, we should recognize that the real issue is not immigrants, but it's really that we are being pitted, right, human being to human being against each other, to keep others richer, right? And over the past 4 decades, the income gap in our country between the rich and the poor in the United States has significantly widened. In the 1970s, it was the top 10% of earners receive approximately 1/3 of the nation's total income. Today, they account for less than half. So, I got to witness this
Gabby, take about 15 more seconds.
on a walk that I did from Miami to Washington, D.C. and North Carolina. I saw the tension between the African American community and who traditionally had jobs in poultry, and they brought immigrants from Guatemala that didn't even speak Spanish and stole their documents and kept them, right, working there below minimum wage. And so I think that at the core of it, it's not really the people, but rather businesses and these billionaires, right, that are pocketing and getting themselves richer while we are like fighting each other for these jobs and these issues.
So I'm going to start out, right. I am third generation here. My great grandparents and my grandparents, from different parts of my heritage, all immigrated here. I have um, no ancestry on this in the United States beyond that, and they were all fleeing, World War I or World War II or some other conflict somewhere. and they came here through Paris Island. Not Paris Island.
Ellis Island.
Yeah, Ellis Island, right? I have two Marine, my son and daughter are both Marines. Anyway, and all my life I've been involved in helping folks who immigrated into this country legally, right? And I was a young boy, 8, 9, 10 years old, and I witnessed my father and his business vouching for folks from Korea to come over here. They needed to have a sponsor and someone that would promise employment. And the Vietnamese refugees, when I was 19 years old, we helped a family. We refurbished a house so they could come and live here. And immigration, I think, is a good thing. And open borders like we've had recently, I think, is more harmful than helpful. The fact that the minimum wage in the United States is still $7.25 an hour is a crime. It's a crime, right? And we have folks who are coming in here, undocumented or illegal, whatever words we want to use, who are being taken advantage of, and some of them are even working for less than that. And that's a crime also. I don't see the folks coming over the border as the problem or the issue. I think it's the business owners and the politicians or whoever's benefiting from these folks that are coming over the borders as being the problem. They're allowing it to happen. They're encouraging it to happen. They're blocking it from being reformed in a lot of ways. And it helps the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, just as Gaby was saying. And that's all I have to say about it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Juan, let's go to you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Juan Rangel from Chicago. And our weather is balmy 50 degrees today. So I'm a longtime advocate for the Latino community here in Chicago, working on various issues, including immigration back in the 90s and early 2000s. We helped tens of thousands of people become American citizens. And that's an important step in the immigration story. My parents came here from Mexico in the 1950s. They were illegal, undocumented, whatever the choice of words there. I think I may even be an anchor baby. I'm not even sure about that. But and I say that because my parents came here at a time when it was expected. You would cross the border. I was born in Brownsville, Texas, border town. And there was an expectation that people would come over, work, and then they'd go back, and then they'd come back again and all that. But then they decided that they were going to stay. They started having their kids here. I don't think that they ever imagined that they'd be here for the rest of their lives. I think they thought they'd be here for a few years, make some money, and then be able to go back and live in Mexico. And that day never happened. Both my parents passed away a few years back. And I say that because I think that's part of the dilemma that this country has. There is an expectation that immigrants are going to continue to come and supplant workers and provide for lower wages and all that, which keeps everything at a lower cost. But at the same time, we haven't had anything. For 30 years, we've been talking about immigration reform, fixing the immigration problem, and fixing the border and so forth. But we give it lip service and we don't do it. So part of me thinks, well, there is an expectation that there is going to be low-wage workers that are going to continue to come to this country for the benefit of the country. But on the flip side, and this is where I do differ from some of the other speakers may differ, I'm not sure, from the other speakers on the blue side, is that I don't think that as much as I think that there's an expectation of having workers, immigrants come to this country. We do nothing to try to help folks assimilate into this the broader community, and that becomes a problem. If you think of the last 30 years, we've had millions. I don't know what the number is today. One time we were saying that there's 11 undocumented folks, mostly from Mexico, but we do nothing to help them assimilate into this country because they're not going to go back. And we can talk about doing a deportation program, mass deportation. It's just not going to happen. Those folks have now had their kids. Many of them are kids that were born here. And like my parents, they are not going to go back. That becomes kind of an elusive dream for them. And so as people stay here, how do we help them to become Americanized? And those are harsh words. I recognize that people don't like the idea of assimilation because that conjures up images of trying to make them white and all that. And no, I think assimilation is when people, immigrants, feel that they are committed to ensure the success of this their new home country. And we don't do that. And so
Take about 15 more seconds.
People are kind of caught in limbo, and I think we need to address that. There's a large group of folks that have been here for 30 some years, and that does not account for the ones that have come here in the last 4 or 5 years seeking asylum, which is a whole different problem. And I think even that population of longer term immigrants have issues with the new arrivals as well.
All right. Thank you, Juan. Corey.
So I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach. I've heard a lot of talk about skilled versus unskilled labor and does it really matter? And honestly, as somebody who started in what would be considered a low skill job, I worked at McDonald's for a total of 13 years, and during my time there, I worked with a lot of immigrants, mostly Hispanic immigrants. And I think we need to look at the way that we're talking about these low skilled immigrants that are coming in and filling these low skilled jobs, because a lot of Americans, number one, can't live on them because like a lot of people have said, the wage gap in this country and the minimum wage has not grown with inflation. So I think immigrants are actually helping us by filling these jobs, because I would say 90% of them just want to make a better life for themselves. There's a reason immigrants choose to come to this country, whether it's seeking asylum, they want to build a new life for themselves and their families. You know, we can't ignore the bad people that come in, but I do think we talk far too much about the bad people that come in while ignoring all of the good people that come into the country who want nothing more than to just build a new life. That's it. And I think that helps our economy. That helps also when you talk about working, you want to talk about morale. And I think having those workers, because everyone that I have ever worked with, every immigrant I've ever worked with has been so happy to be there that they built morale. They made everyone else around them excited to do their job, excited to be there, even if it was just McDonald's. So I think we need to watch more of, have a bigger conversation about what would be considered low skill. And I don't like using that term because every job requires some sort of skill. Somebody that has a college degree has skills that I don't have, but that doesn't make me any less skilled in my mind. That's just how I think about that. These low wage jobs and these low getting filled, especially by immigrants, number one is allowing them to do what they want to do, which is build a new life, and also allowing Americans to potentially grow themselves. And that's a lot of what we talk about, is Americans being able to get up and like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, go and build the life that you want. And I don't see why immigrants shouldn't be allowed to do the exact same thing. And that's where I'm going with that.
Thank you, Corey. Let's now go to what's a policy or a remedy that you favor to improve America's immigration system? Who wants to get us started there? Think about a minute for that. Juan, go for it.
I'll start. I think we have to have an honest conversation, and I'm not sure that we want to be honest about the situation on both sides of the argument. As I said, I think we need to talk about legalization for those that have been here for a long time now, decades, but we can't just have it one way. As an example, in the last few months, few weeks since Trump took office, they've made it very clear about mass deportations, but they've also made it very clear in terms of cracking down on criminals. I can say here in Chicago, it's unfortunate, but to me, I would have either tried to strike some kind of an agreement with the administration, but we're unwilling to do that. We just want to go after Donald Trump, and that's the end of it. Because at the same time, Trump and Holman have talked about the DACA recipients and how we can help those folks, and even those that have been here longer and all that. And I would have tried to call their bluff. Either we'll trade you the criminals, but we want some kind of legalization. But we're not willing to have that conversation anymore. And I think that's at the heart of the problem, that everyone's retrenching to their respective corners and unwilling to have that kind of dialogue.
All right, thank you. Let's go to Corey.
Oh,
go ahead. Go
Can
ahead, Gabby.
I just want to say I have been doing and going to Washington, D.C. for 2 decades, and I have called the bluff on Donald Trump, on Democrats, Republicans alike. I am a former dreamer. I am one of the reasons why DACA happened, from our walk to Miami to Washington, D.C. And I just want to say that they don't want to solve this issue. I was actually one of the immigrants that in 2006 and 2007 was saying we needed E-Verify and that we needed to do E-Verify and legalize everybody at the same time. And nobody took that up. And I'm not going to name names, but I have been in rooms with senators where they have said, we'll do E-Verify, but we'll do carve-outs. And just look at Texas, look at North Carolina. They have a form of E-Verify, but they have carve-outs for farm workers, for some construction, right, and certain businesses where they know. So I just want to say that I believe that we need a legal immigration system that is realistic, that is functional, that is fair, and that it's also enforceable. And that's the thing that's missing all this, right? Yes, right now, Trump is carrying out his mass deportation. We had a middle school teacher, okay, middle school teacher that had a temporary legal status, lost their asylum case, and he was deported a couple of weeks ago, okay? So the way that they're enforcing this is not to the benefit of our country and the immigrants, right? It's to their own. And so I do believe that it is critical that we realize that we are being pinned against each other, that at the end of the day, they're not doing. I was there in 2018 when there was a bill that was a bipartisan bill that would have allowed for dreamers to get a status if they got more money for the border and enforcement. And it was both Democrats and Trump who killed that. So I think that for us, what we need to do as Americans is not only is to protect the workers, but the immigrants, because as Corey said, if we protect immigrants and we realize that immigrants are important to our nation and that we have an enforceable immigration system where, I'm sorry, but it's not just the people that work at McDonald's. I know there was a lieutenant governor and I also won't say the state, that their nanny was undocumented. It should be that nobody has the ability to have anybody, because for immigrants, right, they are exploitable. They will pay them below minimum wage, and every American has to commit themselves to say we're not going to hire anybody, because that's how our immigration system doesn't work. So if we are going to do E-Verify, let's do it for every industry, for every person who ever needs to work in this country. And that day that we do that, that's the day we're going to have a real functioning immigration system, a legal immigration system, where we're going to be able to have people that come in the country are able to do it orderly, and they're not having to wait 5, 8, or 31 years like my family had to wait to be able to actually get a green card.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Corey. Corey, a policy or remedy that you favor?
I mean, kind of ditto to what Gabby said. I think without talking about a way to make our immigration system as a whole more functional, we're going to continue to have this problem. And we're going to continue to see immigrants pour into the country, and then it's just, we're going to continue to have this talk, and then no real solution is going to come of it. And I honestly think that E-Verify might be the way to go. I'm going to kind of piggyback off of them. E-Verify and having it for all industries across the board with the same standards. That's going to be how we at least provide some fix. It may not be the total solution, but at least it's a step in the right direction.
Okay. Jim.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that fair and more timely immigration policy would be helpful, as Gabby was sharing. And consequences for employers or contractors or corporations who take advantage of those who are, I mean, not just immigrants who take advantage of anybody, but predominantly the vulnerable folks like immigrants, whether they're here legally or not. Folks threaten to take their visa away or have them deported and whatnot, even if they are here legally temporarily. I think those would be the two main areas that would be helpful.
Okay.
So thank you.
Very good. What I want to do now is I want to open up this discussion to everyone in the audience, and then we're going to, after we hear from some people in the audience, we'll go back to our first panelist, Red and Blue, and hear about any points of common ground that they might have found. So, responding to the question, what is at the heart of the issue for you when it comes to thinking about immigration and how it affects the working class? So I know that, let me go to OK first there. OK, let's hear from you. Keep it to about 2 to 3 minutes.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Everyone, my name is OK once again. I actually, like I said, I had a lot of really great points. I agree with on both ends, on both sides. I think that this has been a great discourse as far as trying to have a reality check on what we actually need. But I just wanted to bring up a couple of points that I guess have not been brought up. Just a little history. This country is obviously based on immigration. We wouldn't be here without it. Again, we are pretty much immigrants, and we have had immigration from all sorts of different places throughout our history. Starting with, again, Western and Northern Europe. Again, and then we are not actually at the height of our immigration. This is not even the height of where we were in immigration as far as percentage of immigrant. I should say percentage of number, the growth of immigration. So we are actually not the height of where we were, for example, in the end of the 1900s, and the end of the 1800s, early 1900s. So again, I think that when we look at history and we bring that in, it should temper how we talk about this. Obviously, where immigrants coming from has shifted over the decades and centuries. But like I said, we wouldn't be here. I don't think we'd survive without immigrants. So I think that we should, again, like a couple of people here said, we should frame it a little differently. I think we have a little too much focus on the undocumented and illegal side of it, and not, or the people who are not necessarily quote unquote or criminals or who are not good people, when we have far more people who are good people who want to create a good life and a better life for themselves, as Corey was saying. So I think that that's something that we don't have that focus on like we should, especially in political discourse. And I agree that I don't think that politicians are looking to solve this problem, because there have been many opportunities to do so, and they have not. And I think that because a lot of businesses out there, especially larger businesses, take advantage of people who are here, who are low skill, we'll call low wage or low skill workers. And it's good for business for a lot of them, because again, their profit margins are increased when they have low labor costs. So, and a lot of them are the ones who do donate to all these campaigns and help a lot of these politicians. So, it's a problem when it's kind of a catch-22, is a circle. So once we break that cycle, I think, and actually have people who are serious about real policy, both conservative and more progressive policy, and kind of having we've had comprehensive immigration bills that have been tanked by both parties. And so I think that we have to go back to that drawing board and understand that we're really trying to be practical. We should be practical about this. We're not going to get everything we want, but everyone's going to have to make a sacrifice. But I think that it's very important. E-Verify is a good thing, I think, to actually help. And once we actually have employers who actually refrain from actually hiring people who are not legally here, that I think between that and also working on making our legal immigration system more practical and also more functional, between those two things, I think you'll see a lot better results when it comes to our immigration system. And I don't think working class people, as you said, are necessarily most affected by immigrants in a negative way. I actually think they're more affected by, like you said, jobs being shipped overseas, technology, AI, things like, just a lot of things that have been coming in the last 20, 30 years. I think they're more affected by those things than necessarily immigration per se. So just something I want to kind of put out there.
All right.
And also,
thank you.
quickly, just to add one other thing, a lot of the money that does go to, a lot of people talk about money goes to, immigrants who are coming across the southern border. I also want to make sure to point out that a lot of that money goes to NGOs, necessarily not directly to actual people coming across the border. And there is an NGO industrial complex that actually gets a lot of that funding. So that's something we have to pay attention to. But
all right. Thank you. Thank you, OK. And I called on you, OK, because I knew you had to be leaving and you had something to say. And I think I want to call on a politically diverse group here. OK, I think you lean blue. Is that right?
I lean blue, but like I said, I'm not affiliated with either party.
OK, so you're an independent. OK, great. Tom, let's go to you. Tell us which way you lean, Tom, and what's at the heart of the issue for you?
Okay, I'm a red, but I agree entirely with what Gaby said. I think there are three ways we've got to go. First one is reforming the immigration system to reduce the number of arbitrary restrictions. I'm a clergyman, and I'm aware of the problems 5 years for non-immigrant supply clergy, which the Diocese of New York, Episcopal and Roman Catholic, rely heavily on immigrant clergy with a special 5-year limit, and we need to take those limits, arbitrary limits, off. Number two, we need to clamp down so that the employers have to verify the work status of all employees. No more loopholes for 1099s rather than W-2s. And the third thing is recognize that the immigrant population here is American. They may, I serve a little church up in the mountains in North Carolina, We have a Spanish congregation. We had 5 young people in their early teens preparing for confirmation. They were all born in Avery County, North Carolina. They work in English. These are mountain kids, regardless of their parents speaking Spanish at home. They don't learn enough Spanish to be able to write in Spanish. We had them, tried to make them learn the Lord's Prayer, the Apostles' Creed, and the 10 Commandments in Spanish and in English. English was no problem. They had it, they could write it, they could understand it. The Spanish, if we read it to them, they understood the spoken Spanish, but they could not read Spanish. They could not write Spanish. These kids are basically mountain, they're hillbillies. Their parents maybe speak Spanish at home, but these kids are, they're Americans. They're Avery County kids, and that's the reality. And to run people off, is just stupid. It is really, really stupid. But
right.
to allow an employer knowingly to employ somebody who is not legal is a crime. That's what I've got to say. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for chiming in, Tom. Having just called on a red, I want to call on a blue or an independent person. Peter, does that describe you? Are you blue or independent? Peter Hall, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, basically, this is something I have a problem with this discussion. You should be having not just red and blue, but red, blue, and purple. There's yes, no, and somewhere in between. And most of the people you've seen talk are somewhere in between, as I am too. So I would like to see that. I mean, one of the issues, especially, start thinking about housing. Now, the problem I have with mass immigration is we have a housing crisis, and more immigrants, where are we going to put them? But then at the same time, those immigrants coming in are the ones building the housing. So it makes it a very complicated issue in terms of absolutely, I think a lot of Republicans and Democrats both believe, and we need a more robust and legal immigration system that brings people in legally, takes them to the jobs we need them to go to. They actually help the economy, they help people. But again, we have to do that in the right way. And the problem is you have a few people, just like people have said here on the far right, that benefit from keeping the issue there. They want to keep the illegal immigration there because it benefits them. So I lean blue. I am a Democrat, but I'm also more of a centrist Democrat. I call myself a progressive libertarian. So I do understand the issue, and a lot of people do too. It's complicated, and we need to deal with a lot of issues to where it's not just red and blue, it's purple. It's somewhere in between yes and no. A lot of issues are complicated. I'd like to see us and Braver Angels deal with that complication.
So I'm done. Thank you. And then let's call on David. And David, tell us which way you lean politically. And then I'm going to go back to our panelists and ask them to talk about any points of common ground, if any, that they noticed in this discussion. David, you're up.
Yeah, I lean red.
All right. Yes, you lean red. Go for it.
All right. Yeah, my perspective is it's a little bit different. I'm a retired Border Patrol agent of 25 years. That's my office in the back. The desk. The desk is somewhere hidden in the brush back there. Yeah, I came in 1998, and I really didn't understand the immigration issue that much. I know I went to school a lot of illegal immigrants, but I didn't really realize the impact and the enormous amount of people that were coming in. Those are the ones that I was catching. Those probably twice as many that I would never. Yeah, I would just see their the footprints or shoe prints, but never really actually end up encountering them. But it really opened my eyes, especially back in 1999, I believe, when Hurricane Mitch hit, where we saw a lot of immigrants coming from Central America under TPS because of the hurricane that had hit over there. And I saw again, it was just countless and countless and countless. And my biggest issue was, how could we absorb so many people?
Close the door.
It didn't feel realistic. It didn't feel realistic at all. And I went through several years like that. I worked in Texas, in Del Rio, Eagle Pass area, actually in Brackettville. And then I also worked in Miami. That's where I retired out of. But it was the same thing, constantly seeing where I could not see where our economy could actually absorb so many people. Somebody didn't like the word low skilled, and that's fine. But for those jobs that require the degree of education or whatever, there's only so much of those jobs that can exist. And so I saw that. So I see that there's a bigger impact than what people see. I also used to work a lot of undercover work in Miami. So I used to go into the actual immigrant communities. I saw a lot of them that did contribute. I hate to say there's a lot of them that did not. So I saw a dynamic which a lot of people don't see. I know we talk about a lot of good immigrants. They're here to contribute. Unfortunately, my position brought me to the bad guys. And I saw that there is a lot of those. I did see a high level of crime within the immigrant community that never gets reported. So there's a chaotic system right now that we're living in. Not everybody sees it. But as we get into the discussion of what's a solution, we also do not a lot of people don't really see the actual what's actually involved in this whole thing. The E-Verify, which several people mentioned, I thought about E-Verify before it even was invented, before it even existed. I said there's got to be a way that universally people can check their employees. They carve out certain industries. I was told I can't go into a ranch because that ranch owner has a bunch of illegal aliens. So as a Border Patrol agent, I couldn't set foot in there. And if I did, I couldn't talk to anybody. That's just how disorganized and chaotic the whole system is. We all do our job. We did our job as best as possible, but we're just chipping and chipping and chipping. It's unfortunate that what's happening right now is probably way overdue, because also what tends to happen is that as people come in,
Take about 15 more seconds.
As people come in and see no consequences, the situation gets worse and worse and worse. E-Verify can help, because if you take the magnet, which is employment, maybe a lot more people will decide it's not even worth coming in. But it definitely will take both sides working, but we got to be really honest of exactly what it is that we're looking. We got to look at the whole picture, not the rosy parts only. But
all right. Well, thank you for sharing your perspective, David. So going back to our first panelist, I'm wondering what points of common ground, if any, did you notice, particularly with people who differ from you? So going back to our first panelist, Mike, did you want to begin? What points of common ground, if any, did you notice?
I think the E-Verify process may be one. Folks, I want you to, not to be Mr. I know it all, but let me try and address a few things. The thinking that there's not enough people to handle the jobs in this nation is a complete mistake. Okay. I have no problem finding people to build my houses out here in Seattle. I just simply pay more. Now think about that. If I need somebody, I pay more. Okay. The first homes I built in 1975 were built by union carpenters. All right. Prevailing wage. They had full benefits and everything. I don't have to explain what a union carpenter makes today. Today, I watch a crew start at 7 a.m. They work to 7 p.m. and they work 6 days a week. They work piecework. And by the way, I have a camera set up on the job. I constantly have to get after their boss and let them know that they're doing some safety violations. They do anything it takes. But right now, as business owners, this is a race to the bottom. Okay. And this whole attitude of immigration, let me try and put this in terms so people can understand. It's like we live in a 100-unit condominium. All right. And there's somebody coming in and trying to push out one owner of that condominium so they can have their unit for free. Now, understand, we built this nation. All right. Yes, you could say as immigrant today, we don't need the uneducated worker anymore. Okay. We can do this a lot of other ways. But the disparity between the rich and the poor, I've seen where it's coming from. It's coming from the fact that there's an unlimited supply of labor being poured into this nation. And so the good union jobs are getting pushed out. And it's just that simple. I can build houses again with union employees. We should be building with union employees. I'm pro-union. I'm pro-private sector union 100%. but those men and women are getting pushed out. And it's just that simple. I'm a business owner. I do millions of dollars of contracts every year. I see this happen. And by the way, I just got out of a meeting 2 days ago with 50 other builders and our national legal attorneys telling us, guys, if any one of you are knowingly hire somebody who's in this nation illegal, that's a federal offense. And you should see all the workarounds come up to continue this process. This is a bad process. And frankly, what the president is doing is exactly
15 more seconds to wrap it up.
Shut down the border and let's get back to prevailing wage jobs. Thank you.
And E-Verify was something that you saw some common ground.
Well, the EIN process is really, really out.
Mike, I want to go to others.
Illegal to use the EIN process and open up a checking account and they got a business and working 7 days a week.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Mark, what points of common ground did you notice?
Yeah, I want to actually answer that question because we got to be respectful here to the process and not inject non sequiturs here. But really, what I found, I really enjoyed hearing the blue panelists. And what I found was I actually didn't mention this, but I really do think it's a priority to address all of the illegals that are in the country. And I really like what was mentioned, that there is a distinction between the ones that came the last 4 or 5 years and the ones that have been here, like I think it was Gaby's family for 31 years. That has been a real problem. And that was what the root of what really made me so passionate in the 2008 election, or before that, the 2006 midterms, is really I think the common ground we're seeing with everyone talking today is that we can all agree that these politicians are just kicking the can down the road. They're not actually trying to solve the problem. So I think it's awesome that Braver Angels is taking this on, because even just this last hour, hearing everyone's perspectives, there's such a variety, a tapestry of perspectives that all are important to addressing this issue and actually tackling the many facets of it. It's not just employment; it's dealing with the, people that are already here, the cartels. It's so multi-layered. So I'm very happy and thank you for putting this together.
All right, let's go to Scott, and then I'd love to hear from one blue panelist about any points of common ground. Scott, what did you notice?
Yeah, OK used the term profit margins, and I think that that's really important. And this also gets to what Mike was talking about. I think that the sort of arguments about immigrants, like, they're willing to work for low wages is keeping our prices low and so on and so forth. I think that that's completely wrong. And, it's really important that OK use the term profit margin, because that's really where the difference is going. It's not going to lower prices for consumers. It's going to boost profit margins for employers. So if we're going to be serious about this, we have to recognize that if we're going to get anywhere on this issue.
Scott, was there any points of common ground that you noticed there?
My common ground was with OK, because he is the one who pointed out that the difference is in profit margins, not necessarily in lower prices.
Got it. Thank you. Jim.
So I'm not sure if this qualifies as common ground, but we all spoke about the immigrants, with respect. So I want to acknowledge that we all acknowledge that they are human beings, and for whatever reason they happen to be here, it needs to be addressed in a good way. That's what I got to say about that. So I'm grateful for that.
Thank you, Jim. And Gaby, you get the last word here.
Oh, okay. Have to make it good. I think that the one thing we can all agree is that our immigration system is broken, and it's not by accident, but it's by design. And I think what we all can agree is that politicians on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, have long used this issue as a political ping pong and tool to be able to make themselves who's like the better one, and they're both, pretty terrible. And they have continuously scapegoated immigrants instead of fixing the system. But I do want to say to end that I believe that most Americans, regardless of the political views that we have, we want a system that works. And I agree that I've really appreciated as a formerly unauthorized, undocumented dreamer, DACA recipient, whatever you want to call me, a new American, right? A citizen that proudly became a citizen in 2023 and have loved this nation since even before I came here. So I just want to say is that at the end of the day, immigration is not a left or a right issue. It is an issue about humanity and human beings. And we as Americans are good people. We've always learned from our mistakes. We've always worked to make things right when things have been wrong. And I do think that it is going to be up to us to ensure that we don't continue to make this issue of immigration a divisive one, but rather a constructive one. And the solution, as we know, it's not going to come from politicians, and it really is going to come from us. So I really appreciate Braver Angels. I appreciate every single one of you that was here today. And that when we think about immigrants as human beings, that we treat them also as human beings. And that if we believe in the golden rule, our policies should reflect that. So I hope that we are able to quickly, right, come up with a fair, humane system that it's not just for the benefit of businesses and workers and the United States, but human beings too, and the immigrants that come to this nation because they see it as a beacon of hope. And like my family, right, that we love this nation so much that on July 4th of 2023, I celebrated my what I called Wedding to America. And I just feel so appreciative that being an immigrant from Ecuador, that today I can say I'm a proud American.
All right, thank you, Gaby. And thank you to all of our panelists who participated and joined the conversation, to all of you for participating here. So with that said, let's go out there and build a house united.